Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to show you how to improve your overall aim on Marvel Rivals. I'm going to start on Black Widow, because if you can control your aim even remotely decently on her, trust me, the rest of this game gets much easier. What's interesting is Black Widow is literally listed on most pro lists as the worst character in the game, but having the foundation, as you can see, can make Spider-Man a lot easier to play. Remember though, this is an important note, aim is not everything. Team play, positioning, and timing of your abilities is really important in this game. At first, we're going to start with a pretty unknown fact about how your character aims in third person, but also about hitbox sizes. This is going to be a very beginner guide at the very start, and we'll get more advanced. So if you're a pretty in-depth aimer when it comes to voltaic or anything, this video is probably not for you, but it could be a good refresher. All right, let us begin. All right, now a lot of where we're going to live, and it surprises me most players have not done this, one of my best tips is just to go into the practice range and utilize all the abilities of every single character. So what you're hearing is kind of the wind of the background if you're wondering why there's that music. So what we're gonna do is you go to the bottom right here and you change mode, click on that, and you go to practice. It shocks me just initially how many people don't understand this. You can go through the tutorials, but where we're going to live and you can kind of skip is just go into the practice range. So let's go and confirm that. Let's go and step in. Now, I recommend this even when people are playing Apex, when they're playing various games, you'd be surprised how much you're not actually dedicating proper practice by just going to the range and utilizing every single one of these characters and just getting a vibe. What do you like? What do you dislike? What are you looking for? Whose hit scan? Whose bullet velocity is a lot faster or slower? In this portion, what we're going to discuss is how third person can just feel a little wonky at times and could explain why you're missing some of your core abilities. Let's say, for example, you're right here and you use your tactical. You're actually going to dash right past them. It's very strange. Now, if you aim to the right, even just a little bit off, right, you'll hit your shots. Now, it's a small thing, but when you're trying to land a specific tactical ability against your opponent, this can be pretty detrimental. Now, if you're more in the center, you may hit them. It'll be fine. Right? Look, watch, you'll hit. But look how you almost still miss your opponent there. So make sure that you can lean a little bit to the right, especially if you're in third person, to avoid this problem. So if you got your crosshair right here and you're like, oh, I'm going to land it. No, you're going to miss. It's just going to miss. It's not going to land. And even if you're aiming a little bit to the right again, let's kind of showcase that. Ready? And it's just right here. It looks like, wait, I'm going to miss. No, you're fine. You have a little buffer on the right and you're going to miss on the left. So please, please make sure that's a very important note when it comes to third person. Now, when we're using characters like Black Widow, the ADS, right? You'll notice some of the hitbox around is a little bigger than you think. So if we shoot here, right, it'll miss. On the right, it's a little bit bigger, kind of. There it is. Like the hair, certain areas kind of count. And it's really fascinating when you see that. When you look right here, it looks like it wouldn't hit, but it does. And then if you look right here, and then it does. It's a little bit strange just to kind of keep track of and what that looks like. So make sure that you understand what you're hitting and how flexible. Even then, look, like you would think like that's not going to hit. It does. Very important as you're trying to improve in this game and realize, okay, well, that's not going to hit. That does hit. That's really wonky because that can really throw you off on what you're trying to hit. But the same thing matters around this area. And you'll see in third person here. Ready? Well, let's go and eliminate this. Third person shot again, just to kind of showcase how I noticed it on Black Widow. It was very strange. When I'm ADS, it's so much clearer because first person, right? Third person, shoot to the left, to the right. Let's aim a little to the right there. Boom, it hits. It's just a little off center. So that can solve a lot of your problems of what can feel a little awkward in this game. So now what we're going to discuss is we're going to go into the next portion and we're going to discuss how to improve through various aim styles. So let's go and break that down. Now, my last tip as well before we go into the various aim styles is that you can spawn different characters, and understanding how to hit their hitboxes is very important, especially when it comes to the smaller ones. You'd be surprised what you can hit and what will land versus what won't. And even if you're trying to hit this, what can hit and what can miss. So that can be pretty massive. So just kind of go through the rotation here. That's why I say I recommend going through different characters and then using their abilities and seeing how much is hit scan. Like Hela's pretty close to hit scan. How many characters have, I mean, I know this character's pretty low list on overall, but how slow their abilities are. And also the size in which it hits and versus when it doesn't. Everyone has a little bit of something different, and it's important to practice that. Now, right off the rip, I'm going to answer one of the most common questions. What is the best sensitivity in Marvel Rivals? Well, this comes to a massive amount of control when it comes to flicking. And if you're a controller, you need to be sure that you're able to track somebody who's in the air or who's moving in front of you and even strafing. You want to make sure that, yes, you want to be accurate and be able to snap between targets, but you also need to be able to flick and then shoot somebody at a distance and have dexterity. So because this game has a wide range of motion, make sure that if you're using a mouse and keyboard, that you're able to do a large scope and see a lot. Now, if you're on controller, that you're able to maintain and track somebody who's moving faster. That's going to be different depending on it. There's a few variables, so let's break them down with M and K. On M and K, you may actually have a larger dust to move around, so you have more options to do a full 360. If you have a limited range, that probably means that you're going to have to use a higher sensitivity. Now, you may be asking, what if I feel uncomfortable with higher sensitivity? Well, then you can use exercise to control to help, with that muscle control and learn to control the mouse better. But maybe you might need to purchase a larger mouse pad. Maybe you actually find that your shoulder builds too much tension. Then you go a little faster. You're kind of getting where I'm going at. Same thing with controller. You can have a really slow sensitivity, but it's not going to help you if you can't keep up with somebody. So your goal with Marvel Rivals is to find a middle ground where you're bouncing back and forth. And if you're able to do this pretty comfortably, I think you're going to succeed. Because remember, everyone moves around really quickly. So if you're able to do this and not have any issue, does it cause any strain in your arm, or are you able to do it pretty quickly on controller? Keyboard controller is going to look a little more like this, but at least if it's moving at a decent speed, let's say tracking somebody in the air, even a Spider-Man where you need to move and try to track them ahead of time, or an Iron Man moving up in the air. Iron Man's pretty easy to get out of the sky. Then you know that you found a decent movement speed. You can use these guys as an example, just kind of track and say, can I move around confidently here, but also if I need to move around here, that I'm able to do so. Now that again comes with key positioning awareness and overall where are my teammates, because you can sacrifice a little mobility if you know that everyone's in front of you, which they're going to be most of the time. So now let's talk about the various aim styles. Now in this portion, we're going to break down very basic aiming techniques to practice. One of the easiest ways is just simply tracking. You track your opponent as they move. In the back of the range, you can see some targets are moving, and I highly recommend utilizing these targets as we go through the various aim styles. If your target bullet velocity is slower, then you're naturally going to lead a little bit more, and as you get more distance from these targets, then you're going to lead much more. If you get closer, then the leading is going to be much less, based on the bullet speed, of course. Tracking is important because you get used to the overall movement of characters in this game and you can dictate, but tracking is going to be one of your biggest fundamentals in Marvel Rivals. Now, the next technique we're going to discuss is flick shot. This is more reactionary and can, of course, based on the clips that you saw at the start, can look really impressive, but it's not how you actually want to always aim. It's good to practice to get an overall feel for your aim and in the environment, but correct when character utilities, abilities, like when they jump in the air, then of course you need to flick. Do not obsess about this aim style, but it's good to get an overall feel. Now here's another exercise within flick shotting, is that you can flick between two targets when you stand between these two and flick to your left and your right, just to get an overall spatial awareness. I think spatial awareness is very important when overall improving flick shotting, because it is giving you the muscle control you need to flick to a certain distance. And as you improve that distance, well, then you'll become a lot more consistent. And as you improve your flick shot, then your tracking will get much better. And of course, as you improve your tracking, then you're improving your overall muscle control, whether that be on mouse and keyboard or controller. Now that leads us to our last shot, which is the lead shot. It's pretty much where you don't even move your crosshair. You let the player go into your shot. And it is underrated and undervalued, especially whenever you see games like CS or Valorant. You can hold your crosshair in a very strong position where you believe opponents are going to be. If you're on controller, it can be very difficult to track somebody who's very quick, or if they use an ability and get ahead of you, you can technically move to where you believe that they're going to be and of course land your shot. So use that, especially if you're controller. This shot is very underrated, especially when it comes to Overwatch or Marvel Rivals, and everyone thinks you have to have the perfect aim, but prediction, especially when it comes to a team-based game, can be very powerful. So it's something to practice and get used to the overall movement so you know when to press the attack button. Now the next thing here is practicing jumping and running around in your overall environment. Every character for the most part has movement to get you up in the air, dodge, jump up, double jump. We're going to utilize Black Widow in this scenario. I think it's a really great start, especially for a character that is so rough and bad technically on the overall tier list. If you practice this movement, I promise you, as we move on over to Spider-Man, it gets a lot easier. What we're practicing here is you jump in the air, you're essentially sprinting and jumping and practicing that over 180 aim control. And it gets much easier and consistent as you build the fundamentals when you ADS and you un-ADS. Black Widow is probably one of the only few characters that really does provide a lot of value whenever you ADS. Most other characters, even Hawkeye, are just third person, which is why we covered the first tip when it comes to third person abilities. Now, your overall goal here is to find control. If you have aim trained in the past, you know everything tends to be in a frontal 90-degree cone. When it comes to playing Marvel Rivals, you need to be able to move around quite a bit, especially depending on the character that you play, especially if you're up close and personal. You need to get used to mobility and aiming together, because in Kovacs and aim labs, you're not always able to do that as much. You need to be able to pair mobility with aim. Now, in this next clip, as we talk about mobility and aim, I'm going to go to the opposite spectrum. We're going to keep things very simple. In this Hawkeye clip, you're going to see that I don't necessarily have to run around or chase players. In fact, if you know where they're going to pop up from and your team has a strong point and you know they're going to pop up from a specific location, it is very powerful just to hold your crosshair. It leads over to the lead shot. You don't go crazy with a crosshair, you keep it steady. It's like playing CS or Valorant. Holding angle can be powerful when you know where they're going to peek from, and you don't have to worry about missing. You literally have unlimited ammo in this game, and you could just reload, and some characters don't even have to reload. Take your shots, everyone. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. In games like Marvel Rivals, uptime is very important, and you just got to keep blasting. It leads to the next question: who do you prioritize on the enemy team, and why? So remember, keep your DPS high, keep damaging as much as possible, and keep that uptime up. I know overall that's kind of opposite from the basic aim guide that we've been giving, but again, it really helps you center your shot. It stops you from overflicking, because essentially you always want to get from point A to point B. If you tend to overflick, then this is a great exercise to remember. It's why leading to make sure that you're being efficient with your aim. You don't necessarily have to be flashy as long as you are efficient to maintain your damage. Now, in this clip, positioning is also really important. We talked about that earlier. It's important to keep your hitbox as small as possible. We talked about how characters tend to have larger hitbox than you've seen visually. You can counter this by making sure you're backing away while on height or low ground and maintaining a small profile, compared to the others that are just standing out in the open and you can just keep blasting away. This helps immensely when you're defending points. This can be difficult when you're attacking at a point, specifically. If you're attacking, then you're going to probably be a lot more vulnerable. This ensures that whenever you are, that you know the positions that you need to avoid, or that you know that an enemy is going to have a strong angle from. You can use abilities to get them off of that. You can take the height by using mobility against them, but at least you know how to counter that. Again, making sure you're cutting an angle is also just as important. This isn't CS or Valorant, but it can really give you the jump on an opponent, especially if you're harder to hit. And you can also counter this by just being very mobile, like Spider-Man. Now, you should always ask yourself some of these questions. Did I get the jump on the opponent first? Were they better positioned than I was at the start? What role am I filling for my squad? And realistically, why am I away from my team? Or am I trying to make sure that I'm clearing out their back? These are questions because a lot of people tend to say, oh, my aim just needs to be better. My aim needs to be better. And that's not always the case, because in games like Marvel Rivals or Overwatch, aim is not everything, because remember, your positioning is also just as viable and your overall team play. Now finally, I recommend when just playing any new character, you just hop into the range and dedicate even 5 minutes to understand how to apply pressure. This will go a long way compared to just hopping to a brand new game and disappointing your teammates whenever there's pressure. If you spend even just 5 minutes blasting away and understand the uptime, you can ask these questions. How fast do they shoot? Is your bullet velocity slow or hit scan? What is the size of the projectile? And what role am I playing for the team? Remember, that's why I'm recommending Black Widow as a base, because it gives you a strong reason to not only just be accurate, but also provide an exercise that gives you some flexibility over other characters. Most others are honestly just aimbot nearly and have much larger projectiles, and even if they're melee, then it gets a lot easier. But because if you've already practiced on such a horrible character like Black Widow early on, man, the rest of the game gets easy. And for anyone new, if you apply any of these learnings, I promise you, you're going to be much better than the average player that approaches this game. If you enjoyed this video, if you found anything helpful, be sure to leave a like and comment. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.